about your position.
Okay. All right. I'll do it. I'll just do it quick.
All right. You guys ready to go? Hey, Jack.
Glad I
Good to see you.
wasn't those parents.
Hey, just guys ready?
Yeah. You ready, Jack?
Good evening. My name is Dean Vallone. I'm the president of the Lower Allen Township Board of Commissioners. This evening, I'm calling to order our regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of April 25th, 2022. Proof of publications available for this meeting. We begin our meetings with the prayer and a pledge of allegiance. We'll pray. We pray this day to give thanks for all the many blessings bestowed upon our township. Watch over us who are entrusted with the administration of this township. Create in us the earnest desire to serve faithfully and permit us to experience the joys of noble service completed for our residents. Encourage cooperation from those who are served and from those who serve. Help us to use every willing service and every effort put forth for good government. Heavenly Father, we ask your guidance to help us as commissioners to make the right decisions. We ask that you aid our staff as they perform the daily tasks of running our township, and we request that you be by our first responders as they protect our residents and see that they return home safe at the end of each day. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, welcome to our meeting, both in person and those who are joining us viewing via the live stream on YouTube. Welcome. Commissioners, in our packets this week, as usual, we received a copy of draft minutes from our April 11th meeting, 2022. And if there are any questions or comments or adjustments to those minutes, please make them known now. Otherwise, I'd be seeking a motion to approve the minutes from April 11th.
Mr. President, I do have a correction. On my comments on page 4, it says, extended an invitation to observe the preliminary hearing. It should be the preliminary injunction hearing.
Will you repeat that, Mr. Solicitor?
I will.
Okay.
In my comments on page 4, second sentence, you'll see he extended an invitation to observe the preliminary hearing. It should say preliminary injunction hearing.
Understood. Preliminary injunction hearing. Secretary, I'm sure, noted that for now. Any other questions or comments or adjustments, Commissioners?
Mr. President, move to approve the meeting minutes as amended.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz to approve the meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Nagy. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have a presentation by Mr. John Eby. He's our Township Building Code it's on the Township's Building Code Effectiveness Grading System ratings. John's our Building Codes Administrator.
Thank you, President Vallone. I apologize. I was going to tweak the agenda item. I was on vacation a few days last week. We're actually going to combine item 4 and item 6C. We're going to tell you a little bit about Building Safety Month, which is the subject of a resolution that you have scheduled for action. But I also will be presenting our Building Code Effectiveness Grading Schedule ratings. So first, let's get the acronyms out of the way. ICC is International Code Council. The township is a member. It's a nonprofit, U.S.-based organization that develops codes and provides professional training and resources. We have 4 voting members based on our population: Mr. Yeagley, Captain Worth, myself, and construction code official Rich Lehigh. We vote on governance and code development. UCC, Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code. We're currently using the 2018 International Codes as amended by the PA process, which includes the Review and Advisory Council. The RAC is a periodic review and adoption board for the UCC regulations. Mr. Yegley was appointed in 2017 by the governor as the statewide subject matter expert on fire codes. So Bill serves on the RAC. Basically, why is Building Safety Month important? We're trying to raise public awareness of the profile of code officials and encourage public commitment to safer, more resilient, and sustainable building construction and natural disaster damage mitigation through professional application of model codes. And I have the model proclamation that your resolution is based on. One highlight says commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment. The other is where we get to the fact that we consider ourselves the silent defenders. Building Safety Month is to remind the public about the critical role our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, local code officials, who assure safe, sustainable, and affordable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. So as silent defenders, we don't show up at the property with lights and sirens, and we don't get on the news if we do our job right. So that's our angle. We're here to make things safer for the first responders and the building occupants. With that, I'm going to introduce Craig Dahl as our Master Code Professional. So that means he has the highest level of certification at ICC. Craig has every certification needed to do plan review and inspection on the local level in Pennsylvania. He's going to talk about the role the construction code official plays in building safety for new construction. And Bill Yegley is our code compliance official and fire code official. Bill's going to give an overview of how fire code administration requires maintenance of life safety and property protection features in existing buildings. So we try to get it right initially, and we try to keep it right. And Bill has numerous certifications as fire instructor, firefighter, fire life safety educator, and yada, yada. So with that, I'm going to let them do their presentations, and at the end, I have a couple minutes to announce our ISO BSEGs, or Building Code Effectiveness Rating Schedule. Ratings.
I want to thank everybody for giving me a few minutes of your time today. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. Not exactly a great public speaker, but I'll try to keep you awake anyway. Okay, building safety and role of the construction code official. The construction code official's role in building construction is to apply the code in a way that provides a reasonable level of safety, public health, general welfare through structural strength, means of egress, facilities, stability, sanitation, adequate light and ventilation, emergency conservation, and safety to life and property from fire explosion and other hazards, and to provide a reasonable level of safety to firefighters and emergency responders during operations. Every building or structure designed, whether new construction, existing construction, and alterations to existing buildings, comes down to its own challenges to meet the customer's needs and to meet the minimum standards of the code to be safe. When performing plan reviews, there are many steps in the process to determine compliance with the code, overall safety of the building and the structure and its occupants. I will cover the process that the construction code officials must follow to determine compliance and overall safety of the building and the structure. All buildings and structures are classified by a type and occupancy and use. Different classifications of occupancy and use represent varying levels of hazards and risks to the occupants and adjacent properties. Currently, there's 26 different occupancy classifications / use groups within the building code. When designing a building or structure, the first question will be classification and designation of the building or structure. The code has special detailed requirements based on occupancy, use, and the type of construction, emergency system requirements, specific means of egress, live and dead loading requirements for structural, and fire-resistant rated restrictions requirements, to name a few. There are 5 different types of construction currently in the code. Types 1 and 2 are types of construction in which building elements are mostly non-combustible materials like concrete, steel, something like that. Type 3 construction is a type of material which exterior walls of non-combustible material and the interior building elements are of any material permitted by the code. Type 4, which is heavy timber construction, in which exterior walls are of non-combustible materials and interior building elements are of solid wood, laminated wood, heavy timber, structural composite lumber without concealed spaces. This is not a real common type of construction today. That was done maybe 100 years ago. Occasionally you may see it, but not very often. And of the 5 types of constructions, they're further divided into groups A, which means protected, and B, which means unprotected. What A and B means, protected means the structural components are protected against fire. They'll have something there to protect them, whether it's a wet sprinkler system spraying on it, whether it be drywall, a spray applied adhesive coating. There's going to be something there to protect the structural elements. That designates between A and B. And another thing we have to look at are general heights and area limitations that are designed by the code for the type of construction, occupancy group, fire resistance rating for building elements, fire separation distance, and whether a building has fire sprinklers / protection. The code official will determine compliance by the tables in the building code if there's more than one occupancy group in a building, which we consider that a mixed occupancy group. They must be considered separately. Each occupancy group within a building must comply with the fire separation requirements by the code. Building code regulates the size of a building in order to limit to a reasonable level the magnitude of the fire that may potentially develop. In larger buildings, there is typically more people at risk during a fire. Height restrictions are also imposed to address egress concerns at fire department access limitations. The area of the country you are constructing or altering a building has a significant impact on how the building will be constructed as well. Typical design considerations include prone to flood, hurricane, earthquake, tornado, snow loads, wind loads, and wildfires. A construction code official must be aware of the hazards and confirm the design and construction complies with the special construction requirements for continued safe occupancy of the building. Another important construction code official job is to determine fire and life safety systems are required in a building and to provide reasonable level of safety to the occupants, emergency personnel during an emergency. Automatic fire detection systems are required in a building to protect the occupants of a building and early warning of a fire, giving the occupants precious time to exit to safety. Automatic fire sprinklers are required to suppress or significantly slow down spread of flames, giving occupants more time to escape and give firefighters precious moments needed to save lives and property. Life safety systems are required on a building based on occupancy classification and use, size of the fire area, occupant load, floor level, and type and quantity of expected commodities stored in the building. Another important life safety system includes emergency backup power, emergency lighting, exit signs, smoke control systems, smoke and heat vents, explosion venting. That would be like somewhere that they maybe either store or process combustible content. That would have explosion venting. Emergency responder radio coverage and fire command centers used by firefighters for vital information to fight fires and save lives and property. We must confirm that required fire extinguishers installed spaced correctly throughout the building, correct type and size of the fire extinguisher for the fire hazard. Installed at correct height above floor, utilizing cabinets or hangers and brackets in conspicuous areas at a location readily accessible. Another major factor in the code to get things right is the occupant load. Occupant load is an especially crucial factor in the design of a building. Occupant load is determined in accordance with the net, gross or net square foot of the building space and the function of the space. Occupant load in assembly occupancies be like a bunch of people meeting like in a sport venue or something like that. That's considered an occupancy, or even in a large dining area. But occupant load and assembly occupancies utilize different methods of determining occupant load based on the seating arrangements and standing space. Assembly occupancy can be based on different occupant load factors in the code, including standing space, concentrated, chairs only, without fixed seat, unconcentrated, table and chairs, fixed seats, such as gaming floors and exhibit galleries. Some assembly occupancies have a combination of several different types of occupant load factors to determine the final occupant load. Occupant load is so important because determining the factor used to design the means of egress components and number of exits required in an area or building. Occupant loads also used to determine whether life safety systems are required, such as fire sprinklers and fire alarms. When occupant loads are exceeded, the safe egress of the occupants in an emergency can be severely hindered, causing injury or death. And one of the most important designs of any building is egress. It's the ability to get out of the building if there's an emergency in a timely fashion without everybody funneling just to get through one small door. When a fire or other life safety emergency occurs in a building, the most important thing occupants must do is get out of the building to a safe area immediately. The importance of proper design means of egress system is not only important to the occupants of the building to escape harm, also vital to firefighters and emergency personnel to assist the occupants exit the building to safety. A construction code official must determine how many exits are required, correct sizing of exits, correct sizing of quarters, ramps, stairways, aisles, and area of refuge. Other important considerations that must be verified by the construction code official is maximum travel distance to exits is not exceeded and remoteness of exits, stairways, and ramps. Exits must be remotely located and arranged and constructed to minimize the possibility that one may be blocked in a fire emergency or condition. One of the big questions I get on a pretty regular basis, when we say remoteness, that means like an exit here, an exit over here. A lot of people wonder why you can't just put them all in one. Well, if there's a fire situation in that corner, then you block this one. Or if you have at least one over here, then you block 50%. So that's the reason why we say the remoteness of the exits is very important in any building to get out. Okay. Okay, another important thing is confirm that exit doors have panic and fire exit hardware and swing in the direction of travel. Confirm that all exit passageways, stairways, doors, and ramps are constructed in compliance with fire ratings and smoke-proof enclosures. Confirm that required emergency escape and rescue openings are installed and they meet the size, height, operational requirements. And a point in fact, too, is these openings are sized to provide the occupants a means of exiting building during emergency, but also need to be sized to provide access for firefighters and full turnout gear for rescue. Accessibility is a big concern in buildings. Persons with disabilities can be the most difficult to evacuate. We must confirm that all accessible means of egress requirements for people with disabilities comply with the code for safe, efficient egress in an emergency. We must confirm that buildings with elevators are code compliant and have at least one car to accommodate ambulance stretcher when 4 or more stories above or below grade. Safety glaze is kind of a little pet peeve of mine. It's one of the most overlooked safety items in my inspections and over my whole career. Safety glazing is, in layman's terms, just glass. Basically windows. Safety glazing is a safety requirement that commonly gets overlooked but plays a key role in occupant safety in a building. Construction code official must also determine hazardous locations of glazing and when it is required to install safety or tempered glazing to protect the occupants of severe injury from jagged pieces of glass. And the next segment is going to be general occupant safety. This kind of includes installation of like mechanicals. Electrical code compliance, such as proper application of ground and arc fault interrupters, proper wiring methods, proper means of disconnecting equipment, listed equipment, verifying that the equipment is enlisted and approved for use, and correct installation. Adequate lighting and general purpose power, adequate service for expected load calculations, equipment protection from impact loads and contact hazards, And on the mechanical code side, compliance such as clearances from heat-producing equipment to combustibles, adequate combustion air for fuel-fired appliances, listing of appliances, and connections, proper installation of appliances and equipment, adequate combustion air for fuel-fired appliances, proper venting of fuel-fired appliances, and equipped and protected against impact loads and exhaust fan installation and termination. And the plumbing code, compliance such as proper drainage, traps, venting to prevent entry of sewer glass in the building, confirm adequate supply of potable water, confirm correct installation of listed temperature and pressure relief valves for explosion prevention, confirm proper installation of temperature limiting devices to prevent scalding, confirm installation of backflow preventers and air gaps for protection of potable water. And my next segment is the International Fire Code. The International Fire Code is often confused as a reference to design new buildings. I have a lot of people give me that as a design code. It's not a design code, it's actually a maintenance code. New buildings shall be designed and constructed in accordance with the International Building Code or the International Residential Code. The Fire Code is a maintenance code primarily used for guidance of life safety in existing buildings. The purpose of the Fire Code is to establish minimum requirements consistent with nationally recognized good practice, providing a reasonable level of life safety and property protection from the hazards of fire, explosions, or dangerous conditions in existing buildings, structures, and premises. Okay. And a level of safety to firefighters and emergency responders during emergency operations. Fire service features is things like the fire department would probably be very anxious to see in all buildings. An important part of construction code official job is also to afford the fire and emergency personnel a reasonable level of safety and efficiency by confirming compliance with code. Such features such as fire apparatus roads for buildings or portion of the buildings that are more than 150 feet from roads to fight fires. This will usually be an issue for industrial or commercial buildings, very large buildings, like the big warehouses. Confirm that the premises identification is readily visible from the street or road fronting the property to assist emergency responders readily locate the property in an emergency. Confirm installation of key boxes. Confirm adequate water supplies for fire sprinkler systems and fire hydrants for firefighting operations. Confirm code compliant installation of fire command centers where required by code. Confirm fire protection and utility equipment identification and access. Confirm that fire department connections are on the side of the street in fully visible location with approved signage and unobstructed. In conclusion, I'm sure everybody's going to be happy to hear this. Designing and constructing a building in the required life safety systems in compliance with building codes are proven to be safer for the occupants, firefighters, and emergency personnel. Every day, numerous fires and injuries and deaths are prevented by constructing code-compliant buildings and structures. When a fire or other emergency does occur, the occupants and emergency personnel risk of injury and death will be much lower in buildings constructed in compliance with the code. Building codes continue to evolve, improving safety of the buildings. Because the many hours the construction code officials devotes to thorough plan reviews and site inspections, buildings will continue to be safer for the occupants and emergency responders. The building code official is the front line on building design and construction, saving lives and ensuring safe occupancy of buildings and structures now and for future generations. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, first of all, Mr. Dahl, you did a great job in that presentation. It was well articulated, and I just got an amazing education. Thank you. That's pretty much my comments. I'll open it up for the commissioners. I'm sure they might have some questions. So thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, if anybody has anything, just after my presentation, they can always catch up with me later. I'll give you guys a copy of this if you want it.
Thanks
for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Round two, Mr. Yeagley?
Good evening. I'm going to try to keep this a little shorter. So how does what I do and what our team does in public safety fit into what Craig just established for you? So basically what Craig has laid out for you and John has laid out for you is our buildings in Lower Allen Township meet the building code, they meet the residential code, they meet the plumbing code and all the other codes. But after they issue a certificate of use and occupancy, what happens to them then? In most municipalities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, nothing. In Lower Allen Township, you and the predecessors have established that you want to continue to keep our buildings meeting the code. So it was adopted many years ago that the fire code would be adopted and enforced in its entirety. Craig touched on that a little bit in his presentation, that it is a maintenance code, and that is truly what it is. It does feature items in there that are operational permits that are issued on an annual basis, and that is generally what our team does from public safety. So think of this as the Community Economic Development Department gets the building constructed, whether it's zoning, whether it's saldo, they get it constructed, they give a certificate of use and occupancy, and then they kind of hand the ball off to us. We are out there while the whole thing is going on, but generally our purview starts once the certificate of use and occupancy is established. So what do? We have the fire code to reference, and we kind of move from there. So I just have a couple PowerPoint slides. Probably, I promised the township manager that we'd keep this under 45 minutes. So I do have a couple slides. So just so that you understand who our team is, our director is Director Hall. Fire Captain Worth is next on the list. I fall in under him, and then we have 6 full-time public safety officers. Out of the folks on the left-hand side of your screen, all nine of us, including the director and the fire captain, are certified to the Fire Inspector 1 level. 2 of us are certified to the Fire Inspector 2 level, and 5 are certified to the Property Maintenance Inspector level. And that is kind of a different thing. We started doing property maintenance back in 2019. We had a staff member quit, and our group, this group that we're talking about now, took that on, and so we kind of wear a couple different hats. Some of the numbers that we've done over the last 5 years, we started doing the inspections late in 2018, so you can see those numbers are down, but since then, you can see the numbers have really started to pick up. These are businesses and non-residential structures that we're in. So you can see we've done a lot of inspections. Obviously, 2020, 2021, we had that nasty thing called COVID that prevented us from going out and doing some additional inspections. But 2022 looks like a very good year. You can see we've done almost 150 inspections by this date already. So what are some of the things that we're looking for? So Craig said, hey, we have to build buildings that you can get out of, blocked means of egress. So if you ever have a chance, go out on YouTube and look at the Station nightclub fire. You may have seen that. You may have heard of that. Go out and watch some of the videos from there. You'll get a very good respect about what, the building code is supposed to do once the building's built, but also what the fire code is supposed to do as far as maintaining the building. So that's probably the biggest issue that we see in the township. We don't see great problems, but I do have a couple pictures that depict what we see. So fire extinguishers are out of annual test. They're required to be tested and inspected every year. Commercial cooking exhaust systems not being maintained. They're required to be cleaned and serviced twice a year, depending on what they are cooking underneath. They're required actually to be done on a monthly basis. If it's a suppression system that's attached to that, that's supposed to be maintained on an annual basis. Exit signs and emergency lighting not working properly or not working at all. improper storage of combustible materials and hazardous materials. And then the real fun one is the improper use of extension cords. So just a couple pictures. These are what our blocked means of egress look like. The one on the left is in a little warehouse. Not a lot of people in it, but it's in a warehouse. We all know where the center one came from. That happened to be probably about 3 years ago. I was coming to work and had a little extra time, and I stopped there, and that is, I actually found that the egress was closed, which isn't a big deal. If the shopping cart wouldn't be there, we could still run into it. The doors would collapse and get us out. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. They put a shopping cart in front of that. And then the picture on the right, double glass doors. It's a secondary means of egress out of an occupancy. It's actually in the back of the occupancy right next to the cash register. And they decided just to put some display racks there and lock this exit so that no one could get out or in. Fire extinguisher issues. So the one on the left, that's a fire extinguisher hidden by a prep table. It is there, but it is not accessible. The one in the middle is in the vestibule leading into the occupancy. They did not have a bench when the certificate of use and occupancy was issued. They had an extinguisher, but they didn't have the bench. So later on, they added the bench, which it actually blocks the means of egress and also blocks the extinguisher. And then probably the biggest one that we're seeing is the one on the right, is where they're not getting the extinguishers tested and inspected on an annual basis. The next one is fire suppression systems. So the one on the left is an actual system. If you look real close, you can see an abundant amount of rust that has developed on this system. And that tells us that something isn't right. If it's rusting on the outside, what's going on in the inside? This was in a warehouse. It had a substantially restricted flow. So that was a violation. The center one was, Craig talked about fire department services, fire department features. There's actually a fire department connection behind that garbage can and that the power pellets that are stacked up there. So the fire department cannot come in and access that, hook our fire hoses up to that to supply the building with additional water if it's needed, if the sprinkler system needs it. And then the picture on the right is in a parking lot, cart corral, and instead of, there's actually a fire hydrant in the middle of all those carts. So that makes it really not accessible from a fire department standpoint. So time is of the essence. Fire is obviously a moving, breathing thing, and the quicker we can get water onto the fire or support the services in the building, that's probably the major issue that we see when we're out in parking lots and when we're dealing with these hydrants or the fire department connections. Storage of hazardous materials. We're storing various items. Now, they may be for the MS4 coordinator in the room. She's probably happy to see that the containers are sitting on top of containment units, but unfortunately they're improperly stored. So we do see those on a regular basis. And then last but not least, the use of extension cords. I have to say that the tent in the middle is not from Lower Allen Township. That was from a photo that I took on vacation. That was a tent outside of a business, a restaurant, and I counted no less than 25 extension cords being used to run the fans and the lights and everything else. So I take a lot of pictures when I'm out and about. My wife and family hate that I get my phone out and start snapping pictures, but there's a lot of violations out there. As I said in the beginning, there are violations that are going on in municipalities today that unfortunately are not being checked because they don't have a team like Lower Allen does that are out looking at existing buildings. There was a restaurant fire approximately 2 weeks ago over a weekend, and that was a direct result. They had a kitchen fire that occurred on top of the stove. The suppression system was not tested and inspected since 2013. It failed to function properly, and literally it's the restaurant and the neighboring businesses sustained considerable damage because of that. So just giving you a little tidbit of what our group does. I will offer you the abilities to come and sit with me, come and go out and do some inspections. I know our director has gone out on some in the past. We do about 30 to 35 a month. If you have any questions, or if you want to go and look at some inspections, be more than happy to take you out. Thank you.
I have a couple First of all, I'll make a comment. Thanks for everything you guys
Sure.
do. I think that component of the maintenance part, we can be proud of keeping going here in Lower Allen. And I'll say thanks for when you go out and you're dealing with folks and when you have the discretion, you're using common sense. Thank you for that.
Most definitely.
Appreciate that. I would just say I was at an establishment. It's a chain, and I was in there, and our folks were just finishing up, and I didn't know they were going to be there. Of course, I was there having coffee.
Sure.
Actually, I was there with Commissioner Karen, and they were finishing up, and I said, what are you guys doing here? They said, we're doing our inspection. They said, this place is usually really good and probably good because their standards are higher than perhaps what we would require maybe as well. I'm not exactly sure what that language was, but I'm wondering, as we redevelop in Lower Allen Township, and we're redeveloping sites or building new buildings or retrofitting old buildings, is that pretty common now that businesses are coming in and they're already just used to the higher standard of equipment and process and used to perhaps the inspections where they're coming from in other states?
So it depends. It depends on the corporation. We have some corporations in our township, albeit restaurants and so forth, that the corporate folks are actually out doing an inspection monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly. So those folks are out there, they're on site, and when we get there, if we find something, there's probably a problem. Mm-hmm. Something isn't working, obviously, the way it should be. But from our standpoint, when we run into those folks, a lot of times we know what those are, and instead of our inspection taking 35 or 45 minutes, our inspection is probably taking 15 minutes, because we know somebody has been there in the last month, maybe in the last quarter, that has looked that over and generally keeps those things in order. Lower Allen is very, very, I don't want to say we groomed our businesses, but we have, where if they don't hear from me and they go, wow, I think we're due for an inspection, my phone generally will ring, or I'll get an email from our businesses saying, I think I'm supposed to have an inspection this month, and I don't want to run up against the wall. We have a lot of businesses that are turning the inspection sheets that we give them, no violations, over to their insurance company. And their insurance company loves that. They're actually getting insurance breaks because we're out doing these inspections for them.
Good. I have other questions, but I really don't want to take up all the time. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Do you ever have a business resident that will come in and ask you to do an inspection?
Yes. Yes.
Do you have a lot of those?
From a residential standpoint?
Well, let's try commercial first.
I have several commercial establishments that will call me and say, I am due for my inspection. I need you to come and do that because the Department of Health is looking for that, or this agency is looking for your report. So we have several of those establishments within the township and they could be industrial, they could be commercial, but they are looking for our report. And if we don't get them, we all know that the U.S. mail, unfortunately, is slow at times. And we had a big problem at the end of last year where our notices of that you're due for an inspection was not being delivered on time. I probably had 15 or 20 of those in the last quarter of last year. Call me or email me and say, Mr. Yeagley, we do not have, we're due or we're overdue for an inspection, and we need that because of our insurance company, because of the organization that we're in.
Well, how about residences? Do they ever come in and ask?
We do get some that will come in. We get a lot of questions on smoke detectors. Where are smoke detectors required? How long do smoke detectors last? Where would you like me to put a fire extinguisher? We get a lot of those basic questions. that we get to answer. We go out and assist them with installation of smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? So I just have one more then. So, and that is, and I think this will be helpful for the community in general. And it's a question about, because this time of year, I get asked all the time, I don't know about the other commissioners, about what's the rules about fire rings and backyard fires and open fires versus not. And it's a little confusing, I'll say, if you try to figure it out on your own with what can be covered and not covered, how far away from a structure and stuff like that. Is there any basics? And if it's too long, I don't really want you to spend the time on it. But
It is a little long.
Okay.
But I will tell you that, if you're buying a commercial product, if you're going to a home store to buy it, those are definitely better than putting just a ring in your backyard. The big thing that I would say that we get a complaint on is they're not burning seasoned wood, and they're not maintaining the fire. They're not attending the fire. So they'll go out, they'll light the fire, and next thing you know, we're inside for 15 minutes, coming back outside for 5, going back in for 30 minutes. That's an unattended fire at that point. And unfortunately, now we're starting to tax Captain Crone and his team of, now we're getting the police being called, and they're coming out. They're got to determine, is it seasoned wood? If it's not, now it's an obnoxious fire. Now the smoke is generally laying low. It's a lot of smoke. And we get a lot of those phone calls. So I'd give you about another 20 minutes worth of information, but I'd probably get the look at that point, and I don't want to do that. But I would say for anybody that has questions, please call me, and I will be more than happy to explain those regulations.
Right.
to you.
What I think we should do, if we haven't already done it, and I didn't check before the meeting, somewhere on the website, it would be helpful to put a link in this time of year. It's seasonal, right?
Sure.
Right now, I think it would be helpful somewhere. Somebody gets onto our website. It's crystal clear. Questions about backyard fires.
Correct.
Because I think people want to know,
Okay.
and it's hard to figure it out for themselves, or they might be a little reluctant to call into the township
Right.
building on that issue or any other issue. And I think if there's a link in that, at the end of that, maybe guidance that we would offer in that 20-minute spiel, perhaps also give a link to to contact
Correct.
you
Yes.
for any questions. And I think you'll be surprised how many people would contact with that invitation.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Bill's comments about the insurance companies gladly accepting inspection reports is a great segue into our conclusion. Item 4 says we're announcing our ISO BSEGS, Building Code Effectiveness Grading schedule results. This is not the International Organization of Standards headquartered in Geneva. This is the Insurance Service Organization. They are part of a company called Verisk, and they do the fire department or fire service ratings. Well, they also do building code effectiveness grading, and that is an outgrowth of Hurricane Andrew in 1992, where it was observed in Florida that counties that had educated inspection and plan review staff and educated the contractors to build things right had far less damage, more disaster mitigation. So this system was developed, and our first rating was in 2002. We had a 4 for residential and 4 for commercial. That was pretty good. Unlike golf, a low score is the best. That's a scale of 1 to 10. We evolved into a 3 and a 3, and our last couple ratings were 3 for residential, 2 for commercial. I'm pleased to announce that we are now at a 2 and a 2. We're among a very small percentage in the Commonwealth and in the country that has scores of that nature, and it's very difficult to get a 1. I'd say we're about a B+ on commercial and a B- on commercial, on residential, so I can work with Craig in transition to find out where we can improve ourselves and maybe solidify that. So ISO primary mission is providing advisory, insurance, underwriting, and rating information to insurers. So now that we have these scores, going forward, when we certify a building for occupancy, if the insurance company uses this data, then residents or property owners in Long Island will get discounts based upon the fact that we're the next to best score you can get. So with that said, I just want to point out that there's administration of codes, And then there's plan review. And our weak points are adopted codes and modifications to adopted codes and contractor, builder, licensing, and bonding. Because it's done on the state level, we have no control. And you might recall, if you were on the board in 2017, our scores went to 9 and 9 because Pennsylvania is so far back in codes. And we struggle to get better scores residentially because the residential code has been the most modified in Pennsylvania. So we actually applied for and got a do-over of our 2017 when Pennsylvania updated to newer codes, and that's when we went back to the 3 and 2. Our strong points in administration of codes are training and certification, public awareness programs like tonight, participation in code development activities. Bill and I vote on code changes. Bill's on the rack, and we have staff that participates in code development. We excel at administrative procedures. So in plan review, our pluses are existing staffing, experienced personnel, and detailed plan review, which Craig made it obvious. So I want to thank the commissioners because these pluses reflect a commitment to of the board and the management to professional development of our staff. We participate in the code development process at the national and state level, and most of us are leaders in our ICC chapters. I don't want to forget thanking Approved Code Services. They're our third party that we used prior to us acquiring the services of a master code professional and also as our backup. So that's it. And I apologize for the length of the program, but we get one shot a year, and that is why we're asking you to pass the Building Safety Month resolution. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any final questions and wrap up here? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, everybody, for that really comprehensive presentation and your time and effort and diligence in fire and building code safety. Thank you. Moving on to audience participation. This is where if you're here to participate on any item on our agenda this evening, now's the time to let us know. And when that item comes up, we'll have you come up to the podium. Is anyone here this evening to participate on any item on our agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Any commissioner or staff member or anyone else in attendance who would like to have an item on the consent agenda removed for further discussion can request so now. Is there a request for the removal of any item on the consent agenda this evening?
Mr. President, I don't want to remove anything, but I want to make a comment. There were 3 outstanding and complimentary letters in our EMS report from emergency room personnel at Harrisburg Hospital Emergency Department in regard to our EMS crew's ability and efforts in a pediatric coronary arrest case. Did I say that right, Tony? I would ask that our EMS captain, Anthony Deven, express the praise of the Lower Allen Township Commissioners to the crew that exhibited their ability and care in that case. And I would like to make that in the form of a motion.
So, Commissioners, Vice President Black's asking us essentially for a consensus, maybe by unanimous consent, will you repeat that again, Ed?
The whole thing?
No, just we would like Tony to do.
I'd like our EMS captain, Anthony Deven, to express the praise of the Lower Allen Township Commissioners to the crew that exhibited their ability and care in the reference case.
Okay, as stated. So I'll say that's a motion by Vice President Black. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Nagy. Any discussion? I'll just call for the question on this particular motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? This motion carries.
And with that being done, Mr. President, I would then like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Black, a second from Commissioner Kutz. Is there any other discussion to approve the consent agenda this evening? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to your president, I'd like, looking to accept a motion to remove Rebecca L. Davis, our Public Works Director, from probationary status effective 4/27/2022.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Nagy.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Kutch. Any discussion? Call for the question. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, we're looking for discussion or possible action on this item to award landscape maintenance BMP bid. We received that bid in our packets this week. And since this is a service, I believe that's why we aren't doing an official RFP or bid opening, correct, Mr. Manager? Yeah. So the bid that we received is what we're discussing this evening, or making a motion to approve.
Mr. President, I'll move to approve to award landscape maintenance BMP bid in the amount of $41,325 to Land Studies LLC.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz, and a second with discussion or questions would be welcomed, of course.
Becky, did we get more than one bid?
Are you making a second, Commissioner Black?
I'll second that.
I have
and
a
I
second from
question.
Commissioner Black, and he has a question.
Commissioner Black, no, we received one bid. We did publicly open bids on Friday, on April 22nd at 11 a.m. in Gorgas Hall. We received one bid for this project in the amount of $41,325 from Land Studies.
So a request did go out, and they received just the one bid, and staff opened it.
Okay, well, Rebecca answered my question.
So
Mr. President?
yes.
I just had a quick question, just out of curiosity. How often is this landscape maintenance performed?
It's going to be done 8 times throughout the year.
Okay.
But we will have to bid this yearly. And we will increase the amount of maintenance required as we continue to build stormwater basins and retrofit basins into bioretention facilities. We'll be increasing the scope of this maintenance every year.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Black, is your second stand then?
Yes.
Okay, I do have a motion and a second on the questions. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this point on our agenda, this is where if you'd like to bring up any business pertinent to the township, discussions will be limited to about 10 minutes per person. Is there anyone here this evening to bring up any business pertinent to Lower Allen Township? Hearing none, we'll move on to our Public Works Director, Rebecca again.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner. We have one item on the agenda tonight under me for discussion and possible action. This is a reduction of financial security for charter homes and neighborhoods. They have completed street paving, sidewalk and trail construction, stormwater infrastructure installation, and landscaping. So they're asking for a reduction to a new amount of $1,126,337, and their expiration date would be next April 25th of 2023.
So Commissioners, this is up for discussion or possible action. If there are any questions, 'cause I have one. So it's my understanding that this request came in higher than what we're seeing here this evening, and that some things we went back and took off, right? Which okay, or I'm sorry, it came in lower, and then there's some things that we made them add back that weren't completed.
They asked for a lower.
Correct.
Yes.
That's what I meant to say. Right.
But inspection from township staff indicated that some of those items were not substantially complete. So we withheld additional funds than what they requested.
Okay. So So we're erring on the side of caution here
Yes.
with them. Good. Commissioners, any other questions or discussion? So I would certainly entertain a motion to move this security reduction this evening, if anyone feels compelled to make a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Black. Is there any further discussion, questions, or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, moving on to community and economic development.
Good evening. So the Lower Island Township Development Authority took on the responsibility of redeveloping the Lower Island Commons project, and part of that included installing public sewer. And the reason that was done was to better redevelop that area. It formerly had what's known as a grinder pump, and it requires ongoing maintenance. And the age of that pump was from the mid-'80s. And while it was working, if it quit working, there were no parts anywhere to be found to fix it. So it was a little bit of a concern for us. And when we started looking into the entities, the kind of entities that we wanted to have go into Lower Island Commons, all of them said they would like that be off of a grinder pump because of the ongoing maintenance concerns and ongoing costs. So we worked with the Lower Island Township Authority to come up with a design that would work for gravity sewer. And there was some cost involved in that, and we were willing to do that to make sure we could get good, good tenants in our new property. And the initial estimate for that was about $235,000. And then as we started to redevelop the site, we hit significant amounts of rock, which really increased the cost of installing this pipe. And it overall, the whole project for the sewer, just the sewer portion, ended up costing about $465,000, which was more than we anticipated. And the township has received about $1.1 million in ARPA funding. That's the American Reinvestment Act. And one of the abilities that you can use it for is for public sewer. They have different categories. Some of them is lost revenue, but public sewer is one of the categories. And at the Development Authority's meeting last Monday, it was discussed that we could potentially ask for using some of Lower Island Township's ARPA funding for a request of $250,000 to recover some of the costs of the public sewer for the Lower Island Commons project.
Commissioners, any questions? So I have one, just a clarification. The public sewer portion of this that you're asking the money for, is this clearly a public sewer, like, or if it wasn't the Development Authority that had kind of control of the site as we've been, sending it off to the different private entities, would it be a developer's or the private owner's responsibility, or would it still come into a public problem, so to speak, with the cost of it?
So I worked at the time, it was with John Brossman, and they did have concern about the age, and they were actually doing some work on Gettysburg Road anyways. So it was actually a nice time frame because we were able to work together to help get that property onto the public sewer, which helps them because it creates tapping fees and a revenue stream. So certainly that is something that was beneficial to our public sewer. And then it could potentially have been done by another developer, but also they could have just kept the grinder pump there. So that was an investment that I think the Development Authority made that bettered the township.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments on this? Questions? Is there any interest in taking action on this item to utilize some of the ARPA funds for this project?
Commissioners, if I could clarify one thing, this money, the $250,000 for this particular project was set aside during budget. This was not, didn't want you to get the impression that the Development Authority just decided to ask for this last week. We did put this aside during budget, as we have the $1.06 million, and we were, at the time, we didn't have a lot of guidance on how to use it. We were just going by their general rough outline, which was infrastructure, personal protective equipment, and loss of revenue, and they weren't exactly sure what else we could use it for. So because this was an infrastructure project, we set aside the $250,000, which at the time we thought it was going to cost, until, of course, the rock surprise, Central PA rock. But so I just wanted to clarify that this was set aside during last year's budgeting process for this purpose.
Okay. Mr. President, I'm prepared to make a motion, unless there's other discussion. I will move to approve $250,000 in ARPA funding for the public sewering of Lower Allen Commons to the Lower Allen Township Development Authority.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz and a second from Commissioner Nagy. Is there any more discussion or questions? I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. The second item for tonight is at the Planning Commission meeting on last Tuesday. The Planning Commission rejected Tommy Car Wash, that land development plan. And Tommy Car Wash has requested, or they're going to grant us, a 60-day extension to allow the Board of Commissioners extended time to recommend action on this plan. The Planning Commission is a recommending body, so they recommended rejecting it, but it would actually still come to the Board of Commissioners, and that's what the time frame is set for. And they would like to take some time to change the plan a little bit per the discussion they had at the Planning Commission. So this allows us to have 60 days before we need to give them a recommendation or to take action on it.
Right.
Mr. President, I will move to accept a 60-day extension from Christensen Companies permit for Tommy Car Wash SLD 2022-01.
I have a question, Mr. President.
You want to make a second, sir?
Yeah, I'll make a second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz, and I have a second from Commissioner Nagy, which opens up discussion.
For the reasons they recommended turning down, what are we hoping to review and or fix then in that 60-day window? Because ultimately, if we just kick it down the road 60 days and nothing changes, what are we hoping to amend or to make it more?
So the items that the the Planning Commission discussed were potentially getting different trip count information. The trip counts that they provided previously were from February, and there was concern that that might not be a typical time to get a car wash, so they were concerned that that might not be an accurate reflection of how many cars will actually be generated when this use is in place. So I believe they're going to go back and do a different study, or at least they now have time that they can go back and do that should they choose to. There were some questions about the amount of sound that comes out of the car washes, and they have studies that they can do, and they can compare it to our ordinances to make sure that they would actually meet, and I believe that they are planning to do that as well. So that's some of the information I think that they're hoping to get. And then they also indicated that they'd like to be able to go back to the Planning Commission and get a recommendation for approval so that they're coming to the Board of Commissioners with that backing. Oh, sorry. And there also was a access issue where they wanted to put a pork chop in. It accesses onto Gettysburg Road, and they were going to allow left in movements, and I think they decided that they're probably going to just go for right in, right out at both of their entrances, and then put a pork chop in the middle so that it helps restrict those left turn movements. And I believe those were the changes that they were discussing.
Aaron, have you reviewed plans, and are they going to improve sight distance for vehicles coming out of that site?
They did talk about actually, at Hartsdale, grading down the elevation there. If you're actually at the light at Hartsdale and Gettysburg, there's a no right turn there because you can't see because it's obstructed due to the grading that's there. So they're going to take that down. So actually, I think that's kind of an improvement for that area. And then the fact that there are currently 3 developed residential properties or commercial properties that have formerly were residential. So they're going to be taking 3 access points and making it into 1. So I think that's a bit of an improvement on the site. And what else was the question?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
And when the last time around, prior to last month's meeting, not this past meeting, it was a preliminary plan at that point, right?
They asked for a waiver of preliminary plan.
Okay, but the planning commission had some concerns, and then they came back, they already made some adjustments, for instance, sidewalk.
They did.
That was a big thing the first time they came around, and then in this last meeting, they did kind of make some adjustments. So I'm assuming they're interested in complying and maybe trying to work with the planning commission and some of their concerns. But we'll see what happens. So how this plays out, then it'll go back to planning commission. If they choose to follow, if they choose to go through with it, it would have to go back to planning commission, right?
It does not have to go back to planning commission. They just expressed that would be their preference.
Yeah, if we have any say in it, I would like to see that go back to planning commission.
Well, I think we can refer it back to the planning commission.
Yeah, if we have say in it, because I was at both of those meetings, and I think it would be helpful. I think the planning commission has done a good job vetting that project so far, and I would like to see them continue to have a voice in that. So, great. Any other questions, commissioners, or comments on 10B?
I just had a quick question, just to confirm, this is the first 60-day extension that would be granted? Or has
Yes.
it- Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That was it.
Anything else? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to our township manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I move on with my listed item, we have an additional item that we would like to present to the board tonight. I apologize, I didn't get it on the agenda under presentations. I wasn't sure we'd have enough time after John's presentation tonight.
My presentation was brief.
I understand. As most of you are aware, the township applied for and received a Excellence in Government Award from the Department of Community and Economic Development, which some of us got to go receive. Erin has on her table over there the little plaque award and the certificate from them, and also a citation from the House of Representatives congratulating us on our award. So, Erin, did you want to pass those things around so that the board can?
Sure. Did you want me to read the little
that would be
blurb
nice.
that they kind of did for us?
Please do.
So we were actually awarded intergovernmental cooperation. So it was presented to both Lower Allen Township Development Authority and Lower Allen Township. Lower Allen Township and the Lower Allen Township Development Authority partnered to bring the stability of government and the flexibility of an authority to help guide development. As part of their 2018 comprehensive plan implementation, Lower Allen Township Development Authority purchased and redeveloped a vacant and strategic site in the township's business district to ensure economic vitality. With no state or federal funding, just the backing of the township authority security loan and purchased the site with the goal of creating an economic anchor and removing a blighted space. Now, 3 years later, Marriott is developing a hotel on the site and Trader Joe's has located in the business district. This development has brought new life to an old property. That's what they recognized us for. Should I give it to you? I'll pass it around?
Yeah, just pass them around.
That's the citation from Representative Delozier. And this was the award. It's lucite, so you can't break it.
They had the
I cleaned all the fingerprints off at once. I'll do it again.
The presentation was made at the State Museum downtown in the auditorium, and there were municipalities from all over the state getting awards for different things. It was nice to be plugged into this one this year. Thank you. So in the meantime,
move on.
Mr. Manager, why don't you go ahead and get started?
Certainly. The solicitor and I attended the preliminary injunction hearing. Well, I should say this morning. It was all day. We went at 10 o'clock, but it was we didn't get out until 4 o'clock. But I just wanted to bring the board. I planned on bringing the board up to date on whatever we found out today. I'll let the solicitor summarize it, if he would like.
Yeah, unfortunately, the hearing was still going on, and Tom and I had this meeting, so we couldn't stay. It's like any kind of litigation item. I thought the morning went really well. I think the judge seemed impressed that the P3 public-private partnership process, that's a lot of Ps, was not followed, and generally violations of statutes are per se grounds for a preliminary rejection. So I thought that was really good. The afternoon, the PennDOT folks tried to poke holes in the immediacy of the harm. So they didn't really contest the standing of the municipalities, but they're saying, the bridge construction and tolling, if any, wouldn't start till 2024. The judge seemed to listen to that rather intently. But we'll see. And this is not the final, because the Bridgeville case, which is out in Fayette County, goes to argument en banc in May 22nd, I believe. So they have this similar issues, not exactly the same. So we'll keep you posted as this progresses. I will say PennDOT belatedly brought over the executive deputy secretary, and she was a very good witness, probably their best witness. But again, things that we all know, that the legislature does not fund PennDOT, and PennDOT's money goes to places it shouldn't, and there's just massive need for projects, and everybody agrees that South Bridge needs to be replaced. It's just how we do it, and sadly, it's such a complicated bridge that it's very expensive, and just get by. I don't want to belabor it, but even the federal funding that we receive from the Public Works project from Congress last year, the 1.9 trillion, whatever, Pennsylvania's share is only $800 million a year. That's basically the cost of South Bridge is $800 million. So you see, it's not going to go very far. Anyway, we'll see what happens, and hopefully we'll hear whether the judge took it under advisement or ruled by the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to add to that, Mr. Manager?
No. Again, it was just a request for injunction to halt their progress. And as the solicitor said, there's a question as to the immediacy of harm. So we'll find out how it went. They were getting ready to put the Borough Council president from Camp Hill on the stand as we were leaving. Mr. Stoner, from the planning director from Cumberland County, had just finished. I thought he was an excellent witness, especially when the attorney from Philadelphia was really hammering him, and it was I thought it was badgering and argumentative, but the judge didn't stop it, and our attorney didn't object. So, but Mr. Stoner more than held his own. So,
and I will say I wasn't sure about the strategy with Lee Stinnett, but during the day, the judge overruled all of the Commonwealth's objections except 2. So yeah. I thought Lee and his team were doing great because she overruled. So continue. And so I thought that was a very good sign.
Yeah. So when you take a look at that invoice that I put in your packets from Saltzman Hughes, know that it's being well spent.
Yes, I saw that.
I have nothing else, Mr. President, and the personnel item I have under executive session will not need action. So if you would like to adjourn, we can stay right here and discuss it afterwards. It's just an update.
Great, thank you. And we'll start commissioner reports over here with Rebecca Davis this evening.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Eby, John?
As a township resident that you appointed to the Development Authority, I want to thank you for your action tonight to help, once again, cooperate and assist with the project at Lower Island Commons.
Rick Grove?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Renee, anything this evening?
No.
Tom, anything else?
Nothing further from me.
Aaron, anything tonight? Dave, anything else?
In the event that the board did not see the WHTM story on this, Christian Seymour, who's a firefighter at Lisburn, in honor to his deceased mother, did a 3K walk in full bunker gear yesterday to support the Transplant Foundation and the Donor Dash. So anybody that's ever worn bunker gear to begin with knows that just without carrying an air pack and everything else, it's tough enough. But to walk 3K with that outfit is pretty considerable. So I just thought, in recognition of him, bring that up to the board for his good work. So the only other thing was last Tuesday night, Captain Crone and I attended a school security workshop. Mr. Kutz is probably interested to hear this. Essentially, they were looking at it was the school board. We attended their workshop meeting by invitation of the superintendent. And they are looking at what they can do to enhance school security. And they've laid out 3 different options. The one is the hiring of private security for a number of the buildings. The other is a hybrid, which would be private security plus school resource officers. And the other one is just school resource officers alone. The school resource officers would be for Redland and for Cedar Cliff. There's no timeline for this, but the board basically was interested in seeing this happen, one of those options or a combination thereof. And they tasked the superintendent with collecting finance cost data and reporting back to them at a meeting beginning of May. So it's something that's seems to be moving forward from their perspective. We just don't know which direction they're going to go at this point. But
okay, thank you. Steve, anything else before
Nothing
executive
further.
session? Okay. Commissioner Karen? Commissioner Black?
I have nothing else, thank you.
Commissioner Nagy?
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, I just wanted to recognize some folks from public safety, starting with the codes department. Prevention goes a long way, so I want to thank their efforts for continued and ongoing ways to keep our residents and visitors to the township safe. I also want to have Captain Crone he pointed out this week in our reports that officer just her above and beyond efforts in 2 separate medical calls in the last month, where she pursued much further than required and ended up saving lives because of it. And then I also wanted to commend Captain Deven for his crew, but he was called out earlier for that. So again, that was quite an event, and let them know we thankful for their efforts. And then lastly, on a lighter note, just to plug for the Gardeners Gathering at the community park this Saturday.
Great, thank you. I hope to attend the Gardeners Gathering. Commissioner Kutz?
No, thank you.
Nothing. Before I go, captains have anything else to add this evening? Nothing? Okay, I'll just start there then. Thank you all for your dedicated work, and Director Hall on the public safety side. I know that is ongoing moving parts all the time. But thanks everybody for your hard work. And then of course our management and staff, of course. I hear great things out there from the residents still, and I can't thank you enough for the ongoing. I know that, I know I want to, and I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for everybody here. We want you to feel supported, but I know I'm grateful that you will also listen to maybe ideas or some concerns that we have, and you take those to heart, and we appreciate that very much. So thank you for all your hard work that you put in. I did attend the award ceremony for the Development Authority Intergovernmental Award, first of the type that I've ever attended, and I thought that was a really nice presentation. Congratulations again on that. attended the front end, and then I had to leave for an emergency for the public safety logistics study. The facility study revealed that they did, in addition to the prior two, and one was for the board here, that they did out at the Lisburn Fire Company for the folks out there. And from what I understand, I caught just the beginning of it, but from what I understand, it went over pretty good, and I'm sure those discussions will continue to be productive. Thank you. And then finally, today, Vice President Black and I, through our association with the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Commissioners Executive Committee, and how we're both a part of that, to remind everybody, is Vice President Black used to be the president of the statewide association, so he's kind of always a member now, I guess, while he's a commissioner. And then I, last year, was the secretary of the association. This year, because it's in the East, that's who runs it this year, is the East Administration. I'm not the secretary, it's just for 1 year, but I was asked to be the delegate from the Central. So that would be my second executive committee session that we attended yesterday, and today was the annual lobby day at the state capitol. So Vice President Black, myself, and some other delegates were together and had made prior appointments on Capitol Hill to see some of our representatives and senators, and we saw most of the ones that we wanted to see today, and had some really great conversations. I'll just go through a couple of things that are points of discussion that are kind of priorities for the association for 2022. Some of them are continuations from last year, but I'll just go through a couple of them, not all of them, and then anyone who wants to know offline some other things that were discussed, that's fine too. Public notice modernization, if you're familiar with that. Prevailing wage was another issue that seems to be a priority with the association right now, that we were discussing with our representatives today. Preservation of local authority, water, sewer, stormwater infrastructure funding, which came up a lot. And then, of course, trying to tweak the consumer fireworks law a little bit more. And the emphasis on that, and I think it was pretty clear in our meetings prior to going onto the Hill yesterday, and then as we were there today, that I think there's a consensus that trying to get some teeth for enforcement would be helpful, if anything. So whether any or all of this stuff moves or not is to be TBD. But I'll tell you that there's a lot of folks out there, really advocating to try to tweak some of these things, and we're not alone in some of our concerns that we have for some of these issues. And there's other things too that were discussed, including radar and things like that. So, but that's all I have. So if there's nothing else for the good of the order this evening, we're going to adjourn to executive session. Good meeting. Thank you, folks.